They are not losing sleep because they hate you. They are losing sleep because your absence is louder than your presence ever was. And the strange part is this: they may act calm in the day, but at night their mind keeps returning to you. Have you ever felt someone pulling away, but somehow still felt their energy around you? That is not weakness. That is the invisible conversation between two unfinished souls. If this message is speaking to something you are silently living through, stay with me, because what comes next may explain why they cannot forget you, no matter how hard they try. Their sleeplessness begins when silence forces them to face what they avoided. During the day, they may keep themselves busy, smile in front of people, answer messages, work, laugh, and pretend that nothing inside them is disturbed. But the night removes all distractions. The room becomes quiet, the phone stops ringing, the world slows down, and suddenly there is nowhere left to run. That is when your memory begins to rise from the place they pushed it down. Not because you are chasing them, not because you are begging them, but because silence has a strange power. It brings back what the ego tried to bury. They may have avoided the truth when you were present. They may have acted cold when they wanted to be close. They may have ignored your feelings because accepting them would have forced them to become honest. Some people do not run because they feel nothing. They run because they feel too much and do not know how to stand still inside it. But avoidance is not freedom. Avoidance is only a delay. And when the delay ends, the soul begins to speak. Now, when they lie awake, they are not only thinking about you, they are thinking about what they failed to say, what they damaged, what they misunderstood, and what they lost while pretending they were in control. Your absence becomes louder than your words. Your silence becomes heavier than any argument. They start hearing the truth in the spaces between their thoughts. This is why they cannot sleep. Sleep requires peace, and peace cannot enter a mind that is still fighting its own honesty. They may close their eyes, but the memory of you opens something deeper. They begin to feel the weight of the connection, the tenderness they dismissed, the love they complicated, and the emotional debt they never paid. At night, the mask falls, and behind that mask is someone who finally understands that avoiding you did not erase you. It only made your presence move deeper into them. Your absence becomes a mirror that shows them their own emotional truth. When you were close, they could hide behind reactions, excuses, pride, silence, or emotional distance. They could blame the timing, the pressure, your intensity, or their own confusion. But once you are no longer standing in front of them, those excuses begin to lose their strength. Your absence removes the noise. It leaves them alone with the one thing they were trying not to see: themselves. This is why distance can become more powerful than presence. When you stop explaining, stop reaching, stop proving your heart, they are forced to meet the emptiness they created. And in that emptiness, they begin to notice what your presence was actually giving them: peace, warmth, recognition, a feeling of being seen without needing to perform. They may not have valued it properly when it was available, but now the lack of it becomes impossible to ignore. The mirror is painful because it does not only show them that they miss you, it shows them where they were immature, where they were guarded, where they chose ego instead of honesty. It shows them the moments they dismissed your softness, misunderstood your loyalty, or acted indifferent when they were actually afraid. This kind of truth does not arrive gently. It visits at night, in silence, when there is no audience left to impress. They may try to distract themselves, but the mirror follows them. A song, a place, a memory, a simple quiet moment can bring your energy back. And suddenly, they are not just remembering you, they are remembering who they were when they had you, and who they became when they pushed you away. That is the deeper wound, because your absence is not empty, it carries meaning. It tells them, without speaking, that something real was mishandled. It forces them to see that losing access to you also meant losing access to a part of themselves that felt more alive, more open, and more human. They replay old conversations because their unconscious is searching for closure. What seems like simple remembering is often much deeper than that. The mind does not repeatedly return to moments that meant nothing. It returns to unfinished emotional experiences. And when someone cannot sleep because of you, it is usually because their inner world keeps reopening conversations they thought were over. At night, their thoughts begin moving backward. They remember your voice, the pauses between your words, the look on your face during certain moments, the things you said that they ignored at the time. Suddenly, small details become heavy. A message they answered carelessly, a moment they stayed silent instead of being honest, a time you reached for understanding while they protected their pride. The unconscious mind collects these moments and replays them because it wants resolution. This is something many people misunderstand. Closure is not always about getting another conversation. Sometimes closure is the painful realization that the connection was more meaningful than the ego allowed them to admit. Their mind keeps revisiting the past because emotionally they are still trying to understand what truly happened between you. They may even argue with themselves internally. One part of them says to move on, forget it, stay detached. Another part keeps pulling them back toward the memory of you. That inner conflict creates emotional restlessness, and emotional restlessness destroys sleep. Because the unconscious does not care about the image they show the world, it cares about truth. This is why certain sentences you once spoke now echo inside them differently. At the time, they may have dismissed your feelings or failed to understand your depth. But memory changes when emotions mature. What once sounded ordinary suddenly carries emotional weight. They begin hearing meanings they avoided before. The human mind has a strange relationship with regret. It often understands value too late. And once the unconscious realizes something important was left unresolved, it keeps knocking on the door of memory again and again. Not to torture them, but to force awareness. Because deep inside, they know there was something real between you, and the soul struggles to rest when something meaningful ends without honesty, understanding, or emotional completion. They may act distant because deep emotions frighten their ego. Many people believe distance means lack of feeling, but often the opposite is true. Some individuals become cold precisely when emotions begin to feel too real. The closer they feel to someone, the more vulnerable they become, and vulnerability threatens the image of control they have spent years building. When emotions stay light and superficial, the ego feels safe. There is no risk, no exposure, no possibility of emotional surrender. But when someone enters their life and touches something deeper, fear begins to rise. Not fear of the other person, but fear of being seen too clearly, fear of needing someone, fear of losing emotional control, fear of discovering parts of themselves they have spent years hiding. This is why they may suddenly pull away after moments of closeness. One genuine conversation, one emotionally honest moment, one experience of real connection can shake them more than they admit. Their ego interprets deep attachment as danger because attachment requires openness, and openness removes the protective mask they rely on. So instead of moving closer, they create distance. They become harder to read. They delay replies. They act emotionally unavailable. They pretend to be unaffected. But internally, the struggle grows stronger. Because emotions do not disappear simply because someone refuses to express them. What is buried emotionally often becomes more powerful in silence. At night, this conflict becomes impossible to fully escape. The ego says, stay detached, stay protected, do not lose yourself. But the heart remembers how safe, alive, or understood they felt around you. That tension between emotional desire and emotional fear creates exhaustion inside them. They cannot fully let go because the connection mattered, but they also cannot fully surrender because it threatens the walls they build around themselves. People who fear deep emotions often confuse avoidance with strength. They believe distancing themselves protects them from pain. In reality, it only delays confrontation with their own feelings. And eventually, those feelings begin speaking through restlessness, overthinking, memories, and sleepless nights. This is why someone can appear calm on the outside while internally being consumed by emotional conflict. The ego may win during the day when distractions are everywhere. But at night, when silence removes performance and defense, the truth they were avoiding slowly begins to sit beside them in the dark. Night exposes what the daytime personality tries to hide. During the day, people can escape themselves. They move through routines, conversations, responsibilities, social media, work, noise, and endless distractions. The mind stays occupied, and the emotional truth remains buried underneath activity. But the night changes everything. Darkness slows the external world, and when the outside becomes quiet, the inside becomes louder. This is why people often feel emotions more intensely after midnight. The personality they present to the world begins to weaken. The confident mask, the detached behavior, the controlled image they maintain during the day starts to crack. And underneath that surface lives the emotional reality they spend most of their time avoiding. When they lie awake thinking about you, it is not accidental. The night removes escape routes. There are no meetings to attend, no people to impress, no distractions strong enough to silence memory. What remains is feeling, pure feeling. And feeling has a way of bringing hidden truths back to the surface. They begin replaying moments they ignored during the day. Your voice becomes clearer in silence. Your absence feels heavier in an empty room. Things they suppressed suddenly return with force. A person can spend all day pretending they are unaffected, then lose an entire night fighting thoughts they cannot control. That is because the unconscious mind becomes more active when external stimulation fades. At night, the soul asks questions the ego avoids. Did they lose someone important? Did fear make them sabotage something meaningful? Did pride cost them a connection they secretly needed? These questions become difficult to silence because darkness creates confrontation. Not confrontation with another person, but confrontation with the self. Many people fear nighttime for this reason, not because of darkness itself, but because silence strips away illusion. It forces emotional honesty, and emotional honesty is uncomfortable for someone who has spent years suppressing vulnerability. This is why they cannot sleep peacefully anymore. Sleep requires surrender, but internally they are resisting what they truly feel. One part of them wants to forget, while another part keeps holding on to your memory. The deeper the connection was, the stronger this inner conflict becomes. And slowly, night after night, they begin realizing something painful. They were not disturbed by you because you were ordinary. They were disturbed because you reached parts of them that no distraction can fully cover once silence arrives. They are not only missing you, they are confronting the version of themselves they became with you. This is the part most people fail to understand about deep emotional connections. Sometimes a person does not stay attached because of words, attraction, or memories alone. They stay attached because of who they were allowed to become in your presence. Around you, something inside them softened. The guarded parts relaxed. The constant performance disappeared for a moment. They may have laughed more honestly, felt safer emotionally, or experienced a version of themselves that felt more alive and more real. And once a person experiences that kind of inner shift, it becomes difficult to completely return to who they were before. Now that you are absent, they are not just feeling the loss of another person. They are feeling the loss of that emotional version of themselves, the version that opened up, the version that hoped, the version that imagined a future instead of simply surviving the present. That is why the connection continues haunting them in quiet moments. People often think they miss someone because of dependency, but deeper connections work differently. Sometimes you become emotionally unforgettable because you awakened parts of someone they had abandoned long ago. Around you, they may have felt understood without pretending. They may have felt emotionally accepted without needing to hide their flaws. That experience changes a person internally. And this is where the pain begins. Because after losing that connection, they return to old routines and old environments, but something feels empty now. The distractions still exist, the people are still around, life continues moving, yet internally something feels disconnected. They begin realizing that your presence was not simply comforting, it was transformative. At night, this realization grows stronger. They remember how they felt around you compared to how they feel now. They notice the emotional difference, and the contrast becomes painful. Because once the soul experiences emotional depth, shallow distractions stop satisfying it in the same way. This is why they cannot fully forget you. Your presence became tied to a deeper awakening inside them. Losing you forced them to confront how emotionally asleep they were before the connection entered their life. And now every quiet night reminds them of something difficult to admit. They do not just miss your attention. They miss the person they briefly became when your energy allowed them to feel human again. The more they try to suppress the feeling, the stronger it returns in dreams, thoughts, and emotional restlessness. Human emotions do not disappear simply because someone refuses to acknowledge them. What is ignored consciously often grows silently underneath the surface. And eventually, the unconscious mind begins forcing those feelings back into awareness in ways they cannot fully control. This is why they may spend the entire day convincing themselves they are over you, only to find you appearing in their thoughts again at night. They may try to distract themselves with work, conversations, entertainment, or even other people. But suppression is not healing. It is only emotional postponement. And postponed emotions always return with greater intensity. The mind has limits when it comes to avoidance. At first, denial may seem effective. They may act detached, emotionally unavailable, or unaffected by your absence. But internally, the emotional energy remains active. It searches for expression. And when direct expression is blocked, it begins leaking through dreams, intrusive memories, overthinking, sudden emotional waves, and sleeplessness. Dreams become especially powerful during this stage because the unconscious mind speaks through symbols and emotions when the ego finally relaxes. They may dream about seeing you, speaking to you, losing you again, or trying to reach you but failing. These dreams are not random. They are emotional messages from the deeper mind trying to process unresolved attachment. And the more they resist these feelings, the more exhausting the conflict becomes. One part of them wants to maintain control and emotional distance. Another part keeps pulling them back toward the truth of the connection. This inner division creates tension inside the nervous system itself. Restlessness grows. Sleep becomes lighter. Peace becomes harder to reach. People often underestimate the power of suppressed emotion. They believe what is hidden no longer exists. But hidden emotions frequently become stronger because silence concentrates them. Like pressure building beneath the surface, eventually the mind can no longer contain it calmly. This is why your memory keeps returning to them without warning. A familiar voice, a late night silence, a random moment of loneliness, even a dream can reopen everything they try to shut down. Because the soul does not measure importance by what someone says publicly. It measures importance by what continues echoing internally long after the connection is gone. And what continues returning at night is usually what the heart never truly released. This connection disturbed something deep inside them, not because it was ordinary, but because it awakened a part of them they cannot put back to sleep. Some people enter our lives gently and leave without changing anything, but others arrive and unknowingly touch the hidden layers of the soul. After that, nothing inside feels exactly the same again. You became more than a temporary emotion to them. Your presence challenged their inner world. Maybe you saw through their mask too easily. Maybe you understood emotions they never explained. Maybe you reached a depth inside them that even they had avoided for years. Whatever it was, the connection did not remain on the surface. It traveled inward. That is why they cannot simply move on the way they expected. Deep connections create psychological awakenings. Suddenly they begin questioning their patterns, their fears, their emotional habits, and the life they were living before meeting you. You forced awareness without trying to, and awareness changes people permanently. Before this connection, they may have lived emotionally asleep, distracted, guarded, focused only on survival, ego, routine, or temporary pleasures. But your energy interrupted that numbness. Around you, they felt emotions they could not easily explain: vulnerability, desire, fear, emotional exposure, hope. These feelings shook something dormant inside them awake. Now the difficult part begins. Once a hidden part of the self awakens, it cannot comfortably return to unconsciousness. They may try to suppress it, deny it, or escape from it, but internally they know something changed. They cannot unknow what they felt around you. They cannot erase the emotional intensity that your presence activated inside them. This is why sleepless nights continue happening. The connection became larger than memory. It became symbolic. You started representing a deeper truth about their own emotional life, and every quiet night forces them to confront that truth again. They are not haunted simply because they miss a person. They are haunted because the connection exposed what their soul was starving for all along: real closeness, emotional honesty, human depth, a feeling of being fully alive instead of emotionally disconnected. And now, no matter how hard they try to return to who they were before you, something inside them refuses to fall asleep again. In the end, they cannot sleep because you became the truth they were not ready to face. Your absence is not empty, it is alive inside their thoughts, dreams, regrets, and silence. During the day, they may wear the mask of control, but at night the soul does not perform, it remembers. They are not restless because you forced yourself into their mind. They are restless because something real was awakened through you. You showed them a part of themselves they had buried beneath pride, fear, and emotional distance. And now that you are gone, they are beginning to understand what your presence truly meant. But do not mistake their sleeplessness for your responsibility. You are not here to heal someone who refused to meet you with honesty. Let them face the mirror. Let them feel the weight of what they avoided. Sometimes your silence becomes the lesson they could not hear from your words. If they cannot sleep anymore because of you, it is because their soul knows what their ego still tries to deny. You were not ordinary, and the connection was never meaningless.